Welcome to Spiritual Psikology. My name's Renee Lavallee Mckenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about brokenness and brilliance. It's been my experience and my observation that each person is a unique configuration of brokenness and brilliance. And like many things in life, brokenness and brilliance are a dynamic continuum, and they're often interrelated. That the people most brilliant in certain areas of their life are the most broken in others. And like a bell curve, perhaps the majority of people fall mostly in the middle with mild dysfunction and moderate talent, but probably because I am a person who lives on the edges and extremes. I've always been attracted to the same in other people. I find the extremes most interesting. And most of my friends, certainly my immediate family, the people who are drawn to me as clients and students, and I would imagine those listening to this podcast right now, probably fall into that more edgy, broken, brilliant dynamic. My son just got into his dream college. And he got a big, fat merit scholarship that we are all thrilled and I guess kind of surprised about because we didn't apply for it. It's a little-known school called St. John's. They have two campuses, one in Annapolis, Maryland, and one in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He's going to Santa Fe, and I'm psyched because I love Santa Fe. It gives me a reason to go there frequently now. St. John's has less than 300 students and no majors. Everyone takes the same courses, and it's what they call their Great Books program. And there's this outrageous reading list of every classic in Western literature. In the first 2 years, you learn to read ancient Greek so that you can read the original writings of Aristotle and Plato and interpret them directly. For math class, you read the notes of Euclid and the other great ancient mathematicians. I don't know how they do geography or history. It's got to be something funky. And when it comes to books and literature, my son is brilliant. He took the reading list from St. John's and started pouring through it so he could pre-read all this work. He hates Plato. He's already read the Bible 3 times. And he's an atheist. He's been working at UPS packing boxes at night. He's taking a gap year, which has been brilliant. And he listens to audiobooks, sometimes on double speed. And in the last 2 months, he's listened to Paradise Lost, Faust, Anna Karenina, and he's just started on The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. And he's going to start the Iliad as soon as he's done with that. And he told me, Mom, if I could just read and talk about books for the rest of my life, I would be supremely happy. And that makes me supremely happy because he has settled into focusing his brilliance on something that can actually make him a living in the world. He may be a college professor, an editor, work in publishing. But I will tell you that most of the time he wears Crocs or flip-flops because he still literally struggles to tie his shoes. There was all this paperwork to sign for college, and we had to practice creating a signature for him because he barely knows how to write. How do you make a capital J, Mom? He says to me. Oh, my God. Like this, honey. At the end of school in 3rd grade, he looked at me and said, Mom, could I maybe go to a different school? I'd like to go someplace where I have friends. Break your heart. And he has always struggled with friendship because his social skills are part of what lands in the broken basket. And I had always known he was a special toy. And feel incredibly grateful that we live in a place where there was this very unique school option for special toys. And I had in-laws willing to pay for it. And I had already been doing lots of research on ways to help him. And I came upon a description of Asperger's syndrome. It's a term they don't use anymore. They've just blended it into the autism spectrum, which I think is kind of a shame because Asperger's is its own thing. And my father had Asperger's, and my ex-husband certainly carries many of those characteristics as well. I realized those things later, but the first time I read the symptoms, I said, oh my God, there's a name for this. Oh, I was so relieved. And although he didn't fit every characteristic, he was probably a good 7 out of 10. And although in many circumstances I don't find diagnosis helpful and I don't use it in my own practice, as it was quite transformative to name myself an alcoholic and drug addict, to clarify that particular dysfunction, that particular kind of brokenness. It wasn't until he was entering 8th grade that he said to me one day when we were in the car, "Mom, what's wrong with me?" And I said, "Well, son, you are a particular configuration of brokenness and brilliance." And because he's smart, he said, "I think I'm autistic." Yeah, probably. And we had some testing done, and he passed all those tests. And he passed the tests for ADHD as well. He's always been a good test taker. And I like the idea that there's a wrench for every nut. And I believe that part of our work in this lifetime is to discover, nurture, and grow in the ability to bring our particular configuration of brilliance and brokenness into the world. And I, like many parents, have tried to offer my children that which was not offered to me, to try to see them clearly for who they are, and to do what I can to support their particular unique path in the world. And part of my own brokenness is to overcompensate, to try to compensate for my own brokenness and do too much, which creates its own dysfunction. I was talking with a therapist once years ago about how many of my behaviors and strategies, the way I related to people in my life, was about trying to not be like my mother. And it was explained to me that my extreme aversion to her actually kept me bound to that dynamic. And the idea that 180 degrees from sick is still sick. And as I continue to grow in forgiveness, understanding, and acceptance of my relationship with my now dead parents, I don't really want to emulate them, nor am I afraid that I might be like them. Because the apple never falls that far from the tree. And nothing calls you to see your own dysfunction like parenting and intimate relationship. But we aren't here to be perfect. There is no such thing. But as we do our personal growth work, we grow freer and freer of those old karmic patterns and more able to just genuinely be our authentic self in the world. I'll be 58 in a few months, and one of the really great things about middle age is that I don't really give a fuck what anyone else thinks. Behold my field of fucks, it lieth barren and empty. And as I become freer and freer of resentment and fear, I am freer and freer to just be my quirky, broken, brilliant, authentic self in the world. Where I formerly saw vulnerability as a weakness, I now see vulnerability as a tremendous strength. And when coupled with compassion and inspiration, I see this energetic triangle, vulnerability, compassion, inspiration, as like a jetpack to move us through the world. We could rename the points on that triangle as authenticity, acceptance, and courage. Can we accept the broken, brilliant verities in our authentic self and have the courage to bring it into the world? One of my mentees is a New York City teacher, daughter of first-generation immigrants who worked really hard to make a life for their family. And it was a combination of them focusing so hard on making a life in America and their own intergenerational dysfunction that no one noticed that this sweet, creative, quirky, and sensitive girl was being horribly bullied and humiliated by her brother. And it forced her brilliance into a little box, as happens for many of us. And she's been working with me to open that box. She had been doing the inner journeys from my book, Allies and Demons, working with Spirit for Power and Healing with her husband. And when she came to journey number 3, Finding the Golden Child, she emailed me, said, "I think I have some work to do. My golden child is terrified of me." And she's been doing a lot of inner work. In fact, we did a piece of inner child work this week, and the very creative, fun, and silly, particularly brilliant inner soul part or child part that we came across was relieved and happy to be brought into present time. And it's not coincidental that she is the favorite teacher of many of her students and is creating her own very dynamic curriculum because she wants to support their creativity and authenticity in a way that hers was not. And she's doing that. She's an inspiration to her co-teachers, and what she's offering to these kids, she is simultaneously offering to herself. And that's the really curious thing about brilliance and brokenness, is that they're often necessary to each other, co-creative. That I am a therapist and healer as the direct result of utter failure and dysfunction. And I did so much therapy work on myself, I said, geez, I should just become a therapist. And my mentee is a teacher for many reasons, but part of that, consciously or unconsciously, is her own desire to heal and to give others what she was not given. And so I encourage you to look at your own relationship with your brokenness and your brilliance. Do you have the honesty to name them, the courage to face them, the willingness to bring them into the world for the benefit of yourself and others? Wherever you fall on the dynamic continuum of quirky, unique, authentic humanity. Thank you so much for listening. If you want an opportunity to work with me directly in a small group setting, I have a series of spiritual experience groups. We'll be doing the really transformative, empowering work of shamanism in a series of 6 one-week sessions. Groups of 4 to 8 individuals. Creates a real container of safety and intimacy and allows me to give really individual attention, direction, and mentorship to each participant wherever they're at. We're not following a set program. Everybody will be doing their own individual work. I find that dynamic really healthy because everybody learns and benefits from what the other group members are doing. Those are starting at the end of February, beginning of March 2022. Some of the groups are almost full, some have spots left. So you can click the link in the show notes or shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. It's a really wonderful format for deepening healing, connection, and exploring the spiritual practice of the shamanic journey. Thanks as always to my generous supporters on Patreon. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee Lavallee Mckenna for Spiritual Psychology.